explain what is Men of Action.
Men of Action is a course that I created. There's 11 pillars in it. It has to do with social networking. It has to do with event planning, evolutionary psychology, critical thinking, leadership, entrepreneurship. Those are the pillars. We have basically it's an evidence-based way to explain high status networking. So I believe, this is just my opinion, is that the highest level for men is to accomplish goals with other men. This is the reason why we watch the World Cup and the reason why we watch the Super Bowl. We watch people finish. This is the reason why we love the movie Zero Dark 30, or war movies. We watch groups of men accomplishing goals together. I believe that's an evolutionary adaptation, that basically the reason why we're here and Homo habilis and Homo australis and Homo neanderthalis don't exist anymore is because we as Homo sapiens figured that out before anyone else, and we were able to create, do incredible things from, a military campaign to building a skyscraper. All these things require groups of men to work together. So I created a course that's based in evolution and based in science that basically teaches men how to network with other high status men, and at the same time, certain attraction triggers that cause women to become attracted or have caused women to become attracted to men for the last 200,000 years. So these are ubiquitous. And if you ever see my course, and you ever see like one of the group calls, on Zoom, you can show 49 people at one time. You will see Asian, Black, White, Hispanic, and it's such an even distribution. The reason why is because the things that we talk about in my course are ubiquitous amongst all Homo sapien males. There's just an access to sexual selection, access to higher resources, access to higher status. Those things are ubiquitous amongst all men and have been since the Greeks, the Egyptians, whoever. And so we just take those concepts and we teach them. One of my favorite ones is the critical thinking concepts. We talk about like thinking about thinking. We talk about concepts that do with evolutionary psychology. It's my favorite stuff. But then we also get into how do I game social media to where all of a sudden I live in a city and every girl in the city knows who I am. I'm what I call is like low-level famous. Like, I don't think people should be as famous as you guys, or I'd love if they could, but most people can't do that. It's just the numbers don't work out that way. But you should work to a place where you go to a nice restaurant and the chef knows your name. Right? Everywhere you go, whenever there's a party, everyone wants to go to your party. No one would ever think about missing Dan's birthday party. Do you understand what I'm saying? No one would consider of course we're going to Dan's birthday. You would feel FOMO for not going to that party. Or when Dan Bilzerian would have those Ignite parties. Like, the concept of us not going was ridiculous. Of course we're going to dance parties. You understand? And so creating something like that, but we can also do it for a real estate agent. We could also do it for an accountant. We could also do it for somebody who works in big tech. We could do somebody who sells medical parts, you understand, medical devices. We can do any of those things and use the same techniques in order so that when you throw an event, people want to come. And one of the main things we talk about is the ratio. Like, most of the time when you go to self-help conferences, it's 99% men. I always ask men, can you bring 5 or 6 or 7 girls when you come to these events? They're going to be more interested, and everyone's going to be more interested in you.
So someone's out there listening and they started networking, they're starting to make some money. What is the difference when, the line, you can't buy cool?
Sure.
How does someone transfer to actually become cool?
The cool part is hard. I think that takes immersion. I think a lot of us, there's a point in our life where we're just not cool. We just don't get it. And then something happens and it clicks. I'm sure there was a point in your life where you saw these animals, you came alive, and then probably everyone who was around you, when they saw how you acted around them and how competent you were around them, became more interested in you. You became more engaging to them. I think that happens for a lot of people. Like, what happens is over time you find your core competency, you become really good at it. So cool to me, I think, is when you find that core competency and you become very comfortable. And I think that takes immersion. I think that takes 10,000 hours. What I teach for my guys, though, is the most scalable thing, the thing we've talked about on this show so far, the most scalable thing that any of us can do to show value, status, and competency with the least amount of effort. What Dan Bilzerian talks about in his book, which is the lowest perceived effort, or low perceived effort, is social media. So even if your social media is a 6, but you're a 10 in real life, your social media is still going to trump you in real life, because your social media has 100,000x more ability to scale. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So fixing your social media to where you look competent and relevant is the most important thing. I think it's even more important than becoming cool, because what happens is now when you do that, you get invited and included in things that are cool. You get around cool people, and it sort of rubs off on you after a while by default. I just really think that if somebody was just constantly going to high status parties every week, at one time there were Drake next at the Academy Awards. If you were around people like that and you just saw it wasn't that big of a deal to them, it would start to rub off on you. Immersion would cause you to become more used to being around high status individuals. Just like you said before, whenever I hang out with Lindsay Palis sometimes, whenever I hang out with her, I'm sure she doesn't even notice it at this point. You should see the look on women and men's face whenever she walks into a room, because she's so beautiful, right? She walks in and she's like my homie from Louisiana. That's the way I see her, like a little sister. But everyone else, when they see her, like you should see dudes just their jaws drop and women start staring. And through immersion, you just get to the point where it doesn't affect you that much. And now those people who are more high status, they would rather hang out with you because you're not staring at them or asking them the same questions over and over again that they're tired of talking about. If I ever met Elon Musk, I would ask him questions about material physics, because what I studied in college. I would not ask him questions about who you're dating or stuff on, good job, getting Andrew Tate back on, Twitter or whatever. Like, I wouldn't talk about the stuff that everyone else wants to talk about, the hyper conservative stuff. I would talk about science. And so I think that's one of the things that happens, is that you just get immersed in that. But the first thing I think everyone has to do is fix their social media. If you don't do that, it's just one of these things where when you meet I don't think a lot of men, especially over the age of 40, realize this. If they go out with a girl and the girl likes them, the first thing she's going to do is look at his Instagram, period. There's just she's going to look at maybe his Facebook, but if she looks on there and she sees he has a Twitter and no Instagram, it just looks shady. I don't know how to explain it. If he doesn't have a TikTok, maybe he's not younger or whatever, maybe he's a little older, but it's like people are going to notice that. So that's the first thing. The second thing I do is, those dream sheets you see sometimes people will have, on their refrigerator, or they'll have on their wall. They'll wake up and it'll be 6-pack abs, a Lamborghini, $1 million, all that kind of stuff. Make that dream list, but make a dream list of people that you want to network with. So for me, I still want to get Alex Hormozy on my show. I still want to get Neil deGrasse Tyson on my show. There's a bunch of people I still want to have on my show. I want to get Tom Bilyeu on my show, guys like that. So they're on my dream list of people that I want to get on my show, or I want to network with, or I want to come to my events. So I usually have about 200 male influencers and about 2,000 female influencers. I usually just use a Google spreadsheet, and I'm going to write all their names down, and I'm going to use their social media handles. I'm not going to use their names. I use their social media handles, because one of the things is that's how people are identified by now. You understand what I'm saying? There's Dan Bilzerian, and then there's his account. Those are two different things, right? There's the Instagram account. And so that's the other thing I would do is when you do that, and then afterwards, then you start bringing these people to events, or you throw your own events. When you start doing that, that's when you can become cool, because you're inundated around these high status people.
So one of the main reasons we created this podcast is because we all grew up thinking it's rude to talk about money.
Yeah.
Why do you think we grew up that way, and how can we change that in our society?
Well, I think one of the issues is that because through the majority of our let's just say the last 100 years in the United States, it has never been a thing where rich people were trying to help poor people become wealthy. So the idea of talking about money, it was just one of these things you just understood. Like, think about the upward mobility you have now. Like, going from rags to riches in the United States, you can do so better than any other country in the world. But it wasn't always like that. The majority of people who would grow up poor would die poor. This is why you see poor neighborhoods. People have children. Those children go to the poor independent school districts. They have a poor education. They don't get a good job, and then they end up being poor. And you see the cycle of poverty just go on and on forever. So the idea of talking about money, I think for some people was like, well, when you deal with things like, say, the Dust Bowl or the Great Depression, do you want to talk about the fact that you're eating good and living well when everyone else is starving? It's hard. It's difficult to do that. I think with the advent of social media, one of the things we start to see is we can now teach these things, these concepts on making money, scalability, or I just talked to Dan Martell the other day. The idea of buying back your time. These very simple concepts that are able to make you millions and millions of dollars. You share them with other people, and sometimes you need to show the $178,000 watch or the Lamborghini or whatever in order to get people's attention, so they want to buy your program. I just think it's one of these things where probably before, like, say, in the 1970s, if you did something like that, you just look like a scam artist, or you look like you were bragging. And I think now there's still some of that, but I think what's happened now is that there's so many millionaires created from what Tai Lopez did. No matter what you think of Tai, the truth is he's made lots of millionaires, right? There's so many people that have become wealthy because of what these people, even what Grant Cardone has taught them and these different people have taught them, even if you didn't buy into Cardone Capital. The idea was like, okay, I'm watching Grant Cardone. Real estate, really? I didn't even think about that. Let me get it. Wait, what's that 1031 depreciation? You mean I can write all this off? Wait a second. I can house hack and have these, what does Robert Kiyosaki say about this, about asset, debts, and liabilities? Even if you never bought their program, just the way they got you thinking about assets and liabilities was so great and made so many people so wealthy that that's the reason why now I think you have to talk about money or else people won't understand. I mean, it's just one of these concepts. Again, there's one of my favorite books is The Millionaire Next Door. And one of the things they talk about is parents informing their children about money, about investments. I have two rules in Men of Action when it comes to money. One, money should be making your life easier, or two, money should be making you more money. That's it. That's the only thing. I don't own a Gucci belt. Like I just, because that doesn't make my life easier and it doesn't make me money. So I don't use those things, right? But I do own an A7S3 because that makes me money and it makes my life easier. So that's the reason why I do that. I do have a personal assistant because he makes my life easier. You see what I'm saying? I have people who post for me on social media because they make my life easier. If you just think about it like that, that's how you become fantastically wealthy, I believe.